Hello and welcome to.
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. We're going to tell you why tonight. How you doing, Matt? It's Dawn here. Welcome. It's Dawn here. I'm joined, as always, by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett. I am really out of it today. I hope I can get it together in the next few minutes.
It's a wonderfully loopy intro you just did there, Dawn. That was lovely.
How's it going?
Pretty darn good. Let's see. What can I say, Don? I'm looking forward to Monday because I actually am taking the day off. The kids have the day off of school, which I think is funny because it's like, is this the district saying, it's the day after the Super Bowl? You know what? Because, the year the Bengals were in the Super Bowl, that was the first time they did that. And then they just never stopped giving us, or them, the kids, the day after the Super Bowl. They just kept it rolling. So I'm going to take the day off too. Going to stay home and play with the kids. Going to be a good time. And apart from that, things are really good. So, how are you doing, Don?
Nice. Okay, I have a question. So Monday isn't like a national holiday? Because I know there's a bunch of national holidays coming up. It's not though, right? It should.
I don't think it is. But again, they should make it one. Day after Super Bowl should definitely be a holiday.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because I was looking at the court calendar because I'm watching some trials right now, and it's like the 13th of February and then the 18th. And one of the judges is just going to take off like from the 12th to the 8th or 17th. President's Day and Lincoln's birthday, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. So, wow, that's a lot. So do you get those days off too?
No. We only get a handful of days off at work. Mm-hmm. The really big ones. So, yeah. No.
Yeah. I'm doing fine. We're having a little bit of dampness. We can't really call it rain, but it's exciting for me to have a little bit of something here. And it's still been cold. It's been an exceptionally cold winter.
How cold is it, Dawn?
Yeah, it's the same, but it's dreary and wet. But it's not really raining. It's just damp. So, but I'd take that over dry weather. But when I talked to my sister and my mother this morning, my sister sent like a whole ton of reports of accidents and pileups and cars in ditches because of an ice storm in Wisconsin. Ooh. Like she said it was just one after another. And then I saw on the weather that the East Coast has some ice. Are you having that too? Ice?
No, I think we're just far enough south because it was really cold today. But just about freezing, which that's a little bit colder than it has been lately. But I think we probably just avoided it by a degree or two. Sounds like.
I was wondering how cold it got to you. So do you wear like, I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. Do you wear gloves and mittens and things like that? Is it that cold?
I think my general guideline is if it's below freezing, I'll put on a scarf with the clothes I'm wearing. And if it gets down to like the teens and below, that's where I'm going to be with a hat and gloves.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because I don't know why I was thinking about mittens. Because I was thinking about my cat because she doesn't have fingers. It'd be like, I was thinking it would be like going through your whole life with mittens on in the house. Anyway, that's what my mind has been doing lately. Funny little things. Okay. So are you looking forward to the Super Bowl? Do you have plans?
I have plans. Yeah. My wife's parents, my in-laws, I guess, usually are in Florida for most of the winter, but they always come back up to take care of stuff for like a week. And it's always during the Super Bowl, which I'm not sure if they intentionally do that or not, but I'm glad they do because we go over to their place, usually, order some pizzas, watch the game. And this is going to sound so awful, but I was going to say all of the women there all go to the other room and watch movies instead. It's not meant to be a gendered thing. It's just the fellas there are all football fans and the women aren't. In that particular gathering, of course, obviously. So, I look forward to that. It should be a good time. The game, I could care a little bit less about the game, but everyone's saying, as long as it's a good football game, and I'm just gonna go with that. If it's fun, if there's a lot of scoring, I'm still conflicted about who I want to win because last week Dara talked about the no new rings thing that Justice Mosqueda talks about.
Right.
So it's like, well, okay, yeah, no new rings for Jalen Hurts. Let's do this. Let's give it to the Chiefs. Come on. So I don't know. I can't decide which way to go with it. So that's where I land with just hope it's a good game. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a good game. So I'm not going to watch. Which will be the first for me. But I think I've mentioned on here before that I was going to boycott, and I'm sticking to that. I'm going to watch volleyball or something else where I know there's not cheating involved, and or just incompetency at best, right? So, yeah. So I'm just not interested. Like last year, I've watched enthusiastically last year because of the way we went out, not because but this year is a whole different. It's like this year has been building up for a while with a lot of people, and I can still see on social media that people have not taken their foot off of the gas. There's a lot of people boycotting, a lot of people still talking about it, and yeah, and even Iowa Joe, plenty of reasons to boycott. Yeah, but as far as I've never been able to cheer for another team. I mean, that was sometimes there'll be like, oh, I might want this one to win a little more than that one, but I don't. But I mostly just want to see a really good game. And the reason one of the many reasons I'm boycotting is because I really don't think I'm going to see a great game. I've seen the way the Chiefs play all year. Mm-hmm. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy that. They're super low scoring. I don't know if they've even had a 30 burger on any of their games.
Either. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Eagles are the Eagles. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy Saquon for sure. There are certain players, that I like to watch for sure. But yeah, I think I'm just going to stick with it and just move on this year and start thinking about the draft. And I'm excited about that. So yeah, I want to see some changes. And there still has been some talk about some changes coming because there's such an uprising. I mean, people are really mad about what they're seeing. So do you really think you're going to see a good football game?
I don't know. That's what I said. I'm hoping.
Right. You're hoping.
I'm not counting on it, but I'm hoping.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if it looks like it's really a super good game, then text me and I might turn it on. But I'm not gonna, because I don't want to then turn it on and be like, oh, and then all kinds of nastiness happens too. I think we're gonna have to be pretty careful. I mean, people will really have their eyes on the shenanigans that have been played. Yeah, for sure.
I hope so. Dawn, you said you're excited about the draft. I am not there yet myself. There's like, every week there's like more draft content popping up, more like, okay, let's do like our, draft prep. Let's get into it. Let's do our podcast about it. I'm just like, no, not yet.
No, for sure. It's too soon for me to dive into it, but I'm excited about that's going to be next.
Yeah, I think as a concept.
Right.
I'm looking forward to it. But
as
in
a calendar item.
Not
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe that just means that I've sort of moved on already. I'm just sort of like, this. Yeah. So I have some fun things to talk about. Do you?
I do. I have 3 superlatives as usual.
Well, let's talk about that. It's time for this week's superlatives.
Did not know you had your finger on the trigger. I was like, let's do that.
I just love seeing you laugh. Okay. Yeah. So I have some too. I have kind of a theme. Let's just volley. Let's just do the volley. Okay. Sure. Let's see. What do I have first? I'll go first. Ladies first, right?
Ladies first. There it is.
Okay. Miles and miles to go. Okay. A quote from Miles. Do you know who Miles I'm talking about? Miles Garrett.
Let's say
Everybody's
Miles
talking
Garrett,
about.
future Packer, Miles Garrett. Let's do this.
Here's a quote from the Rich Eisen show. It's not about money. It's not about getting into the Hall of Fame. You will you will be remembered for winning. That's why he wants to move on from the Browns. And I like Miles. I like watching him. He's somebody I would definitely tune into to watch, even though the
Browns are so bad.
What they did. I mean, I can't. I'm so glad he's moving on because he's better than that organization. Surprised it took him this long, but he seems to be a pretty loyal guy. But I really liked that quote because we do know some players are just all about getting stuff in their stats and whatnot, and he really wants to win. And he's going to choose evidently carefully. What do you think about him coming to the Packers? What are your thoughts on that?
So Andy Herman and Justice Mosqueda had a really good podcast about that. And I thought that, as Andy does, he's really good at like laying out the progression of things, building an argument very, systematically. And he says kind of 4 things that need to happen before the Packers would be able to actually acquire him. And it was basically like, the third one was Brian Gutekunst be hit on the head and forget about everything he's done in the past, because like it'd be he'd have to trade draft capital, and given how much Gutekunst loves his draft picks, like it seems like unlikely, if not for that reason, for 3 others that Andy kind of said. But I don't care. I'm getting my hopes up real high because I'm excited. I want to happen so bad. That's kind of where Justice was too.
Oh, okay.
Like, let's make this happen. So yeah, I'm super excited for it. I don't think it's going to happen, but man, I'm hoping.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. I just like him. I've liked him. Yeah. I was watching the game. And I think this was before our podcast. I'm sure it was. It was 2019. I think it was the Browns and gosh, what team was it? Anyway, it was when. Let me just read this recap of what happened back in 2019. Oh, the Steelers. So
it was the Steelers when he took his helmet off, and
oh my gosh, I saw that and I was just appalled. I was like, "What is happening?" But I really watched the game. I watched the replays in real time. I watched right after the both the quarterback Mason Rudolph and Miles speak right afterwards, and it endeared me to Miles. Okay, so for those who don't remember, Garrett pulled Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph to the ground following a late hit. Upset by the late hit, Rudolph started to attack Garrett by kicking him in the groin and attempting to pull off Garrett's helmet. After getting back up, Garrett forcibly removed Rudolph's helmet as Pouncey and Dacquisto tried to hold Garrett back. Garrett then swung Rudolph's helmet at him, which was like unbelievable to see in lifetime. Striking him in the head. Yeah,
it was like pro wrestling. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, then there's just a fight and all kinds of people got ejected. Anyway, I wondered what that just started in a vacuum. No, because there was talk then, and I don't remember if it was Garrett at the time or somebody else who suggested that Rudolph had been calling Garrett names all throughout the game and irritating him and racial slurs. And I will tell you, I have never liked Rudolph since then. I mean, he never was renewed after that for the Steelers. He's been played around a little bit in the league, but it just left a real bad taste in my mouth. So of course, he did his, Garrett got punished. He did his mea culpa and all that. But after that, he did get reinstated. He had to meet with, people at the NFL and all that. But after all of that, the following season, Garrett went to Africa and he was kind of, just cleansing his mind and whatnot. And he because of that, and there's like this really long, beautiful story about his grandmother. He ended up starting this organization. I believe it's called the Water Boys or something like that. And I wrote it down, but of course I can't find anything right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because there's a water shortage in this part of Africa where he was, and he's just done a lot of work with that, and he gets great joy, and he goes there every summer and works with them, and he just, to me, has always seemed like a really neat guy. A really, really neat guy. He was suspended for a super long time for this. I mean, I'm going to contrast this with some other legal, crimey NFL stuff next after you go on your first superlative, but it's just pretty wild how the wheels of justice work or don't work in the NFL when it comes to things like that. I'm not saying, I think they both should have been fined because it was clearly Rudolph starting that whole fight. Like, if you start a fight with a bunch of men who are all amped up, like, I don't care where you are, like, it's your fault. Like, you started it. I don't know. I don't know. Is that how you feel?
No, I agree.
Yeah. And it seems like so many of these things we see, and of course, everybody should be dignified and just walk away. But how many people are really able to do that in the moment? And it just seems like with the refs, when you see things like this, it's always the person who starts it who gets off scot-free. And then there's all this carnage around them, and they're just like, oh, don't you feel that way?
Yeah. A lot of times it seems like it's not the person who started it who, the person who didn't start it, the person who like hit back always seems to be the one who gets like the worst, punishment. It always seems to be that way.
Yeah, Travis Kelce started some crap. Was it the last time I saw them play? So it must have been the Texans game, and got away scot-free. So I don't like that. I don't like it. It's a bad look. And so I will never like that player, even if they get off scot-free. And even if the other person was wrong, for going after them, you started it, you little crappy person. I'll remember you forever.
Yeah, I mean, well, Mason Rudolph has always struck me as being like a villain from an 80s teen movie. I mean, he looks the part. He looks like a villain.
Yeah, and among other things I will not mention on this show. Okay, so I got to get that off and so because of that, I kind of remembered that, and I was looking into it and refreshing my memory. It's like, is that going to be something that a team like the Packers, who are so value high character so much, would hold against? I'm sure they could, but they also have the kicker that we have now had a little bit of a situation, and they said, hey, he got over it. So I think that forgiveness is important too. So I wondered about that. I wondered if any team would hold that against him. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. He's done a lot to like repair his image, I think, in like really sincere, honest ways.
Right.
I mean, I've got no problem with, because that's so far in the past. He's done a lot since then. I've got a lot of I like him a lot. So
yeah, and it's not like there've been recurring issues like right. Yeah, which is again why I think it was all Mason Rudolph's fault. So all right, so that's my first miles. Too many miles to go.
Well, my first one, actually, there's sort of a through line here on these, because I wanted to talk about some discussions I heard this week. So my first one is best discussion number 1. So, of course, we've talked about reporting as eligible on here, which is always Paul Noonan and other folks, depending on who's available that week. So this week it was him and just Tyler Brook, which is unusual for it to be 2 people. But, it's a show where they take like these really great questions that the listeners send in. And there was a question this week from this guy, Donald Anderson, who I couldn't find on social media anywhere, unfortunately. Connect with him to say, hey, man, that was a great question. He asked them to rate the standing of each position within the NFC North. So, quarterback, we have the first, second, third, or fourth best in the division, and just went down like each of the position groups like that. And the discussion that prompted between Paul and Tyler was just so fascinating, like to put it in that kind of context. Because, this is definitely a part of the year where we're looking back on the season and thinking, how did it go? Where do we need to improve? Like, how do we, how do we break it down? How do we understand? How do we, what lessons do we learn? What do we come to for conclusions when we think about the season? This is the time for that. So it was a great way to approach that sort of, endeavor, I think.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I mean, they're both super smart. And plus the guy, Donald Anderson, who sent in the question, he included his own rankings for all the positions too. So it's almost like he was part of the conversation without being present, because they were talking about his numbers as well as they went.
Oh, cool.
It was really fascinating. So that was best discussion of the week. Number 1, more to come. What's your next one, Dawn?
I like it. I need to catch that. I didn't catch it.
Oh,
I saw it on your on our document, and I was going to try and check it out before the show, but I didn't have time. Awesome. Well, also along the wheels of justice, churning slowly. A couple weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago, I can't remember. I saw something in the news, which I wrote down, but I didn't get a chance to bring it up until tonight. So it's not exactly time sensitive, but so the driver in the crash that killed Vikings rookie Kyrie Jackson was finally arrested. And he's facing 13 charges. And I say finally. I don't know if you remember this, but one of the Vikings rookies last year was before they even started practice, was taken away in a car accident, which was just the worst. I've got all kinds of stuff like mixed up. I messed up the document here. I'm so sorry. So Kyrie Jackson seemed like a really cool guy. But yeah, so it was a 23-year-old woman who was arrested, and it was Thursday. And this was, I want to say, a couple weeks ago. So in Prince George County, which is where this all happened. And so that I keep my eye on things like this, because I always wonder whatever's going to happen to this person or what's going to happen to there. A lot of times things up in civil court, not in criminal court. This was clearly a criminal matter. So she is going to have to face the music about what she did. And in that, I just wanted to mention, and I think I might have mentioned this at the time. Yeah, I have all this Myles Garrett stuff mixed up in this document. I'm in my wrong set. I'm like, sorry, I'm a little off here. I kind of looked back at what happened with the Vikings and Kyrie, and the way that they honored him. And I don't know if I ever mentioned that on this show, and I think it's important just to remember him again. The ownership of the Vikings played a significant portion of his funeral expenses. They had their own service. The coach, the owner, several of the coaches went to the funeral service. They paid out to his family his signing bonus, which was over $827,000, which is great, or at least to his estate. And then I don't know if you remember this during the year, but they had the KJ on their helmets. That was for Kyrie Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
His initials. Yeah, it's making me tear up. And they had that was on the player's helmet, and then the coaches were wearing a little pin all year to remember him throughout the year. So also his locker, which was designated for him, and his number went unused for the entire season. So that would mean that when the players went into the locker room, they would always see that and remember him. Yeah. So I just thought that was really nice. It was a big deal. And how each and every player, even the rookies, affect the entire team, how it's such a team sport, the football is. And so just kind of wanted to remember him, because I did see that blurb in the news about the person who actually caused the accident.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as we might, badmouth the team, the organization, the fan base, whatever, like, that's super decent. And it's good to know that they really, showed their caring in ways that were symbolic, and also ways that were like, we're going to give this money still to the family. That's like, that's decent. I like that.
Yeah, it really was. It made me like them a little bit for a minute.
for a minute. Then it just dissipated real fast.
Sorry, it's true. Yeah. So, what else do you have, Maddie?
So, as promised, I have another best discussion number 2. So, on that same theme of like looking back on the season, getting lessons from it, etc. This week on one of the Pack-A-Days, Andy and Perry Goldstein talked about if each returning player this season had progressed, regressed, kind of stayed the same, or if it was not applicable, which was the case for one of the players. Which I thought was another like really interesting way of breaking down like what did the players do? Like, were we better this year? Was it actually a step back overall for the team? Like, what did that look at the granular level? And then also once you kind of take them all in total, we have a better sense of like if the team actually did progress or regress or what. And so I won't give away the conclusions they came to because everybody should listen to it. It's a really good discussion, but highly recommend it. It's another good way to break down the season and think about it. So great work from Andy and Perry as always.
I'm curious about that because I feel like there was some regression, right? Or
yeah, from several players, definitely. I mean, starting with the wide receivers, my goodness, even Jordan Love to a degree.
Yeah, there was some real bloopers. How do you feel about the whole wide receiver 1 conversation? Because you know how I feel about that, and you know how Matt LaFleur feels.
Yeah, I wonder if Matt LaFleur feels differently about it now, though. I mean, because it seems like last year when he was saying it, all the way until the beginning of the season, even into it, I didn't think we needed one, but now it's like I think we do. I actually think we do, and if we could get like a Devontae Adams or someone like that to come in and be that number 1 and to help teach the younger folks a bit more that they're not getting, I think that'd be great.
Or did they learn what they needed to learn? I mean, I just felt like maybe it also, to your point, we have so much good talent there, so we didn't really need it. But then the talent we had, to your other point, to Andy's conversation with Perry, maybe they didn't perform as well as they did last year. Injuries, whatnot, too, that played into it. But I don't know that means you need to restructure your team philosophy. Do you need a star or do you not need a star? And I personally don't think you need a star. I just think they need to develop more.
Yeah, but you expect that they would have, and they didn't. And that's frustrating.
I definitely didn't want them to do worse than they did the year before. But
Really?
I don't know that that's going to continue to be the case.
Yeah, I mean,
like
we can't possibly know. That's why we watch the games.
Yeah, and there was just a lot of like failure in a lot of ways. In that room, and I don't know if anyone has an answer to why that happened. I'd be more interested in hearing that. Like, what happened to our wide receivers?
If we can, it's like they would ask, Matt LaFleur questions like that. I'd be like, if I knew the answer, we would have fixed it. So it just seems like
exactly. Yeah, and sometimes it's just a lot of little things, and that's how the cookie crumbles. I don't know.
I think that's exactly it. I think it is death by 1,000 paper cuts. You got injuries, you have somebody has a down week, you have concussions happening, you have like just every little thing, and it adds up. And especially it really came to a head in the playoffs against the Eagles. Like just all of a sudden everybody's injured and we don't stand a chance. It's kind of seemed like how it ended.
Yeah,
which was
and it was like, I felt like at least in our wide receiver room, we had a lot of cushion there. There were some
seemed like
spots where we didn't have any cushion, but so I'm not thinking putting a star person in there is going to answer, because that's just going to put pressure on the quarterback to throw that one person. I think that could really throw a lot of wrenches in the works. I don't know.
Yeah, it could. I don't think you're wrong.
I don't know. What do I know? I know nothing. So
you know a lot, Don. Don't hide that light under a bushel basket.
Thank you. All right. So in contrast to this heartwarming, I guess, sad but heartwarming to Rashee Rice, Kyrie Jackson, we have Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I wanted to revisit that
Okay.
situation. So uh, Rushy still facing, where are they? Charges, criminal charges in Texas for the accident that he caused with some of his friends racing down a Texas highway outside of Houston, I believe it was. And miraculously, he was very important to the Chiefs team the last couple of years and to their win last year, Super Bowl. And miraculously, the NFL just said, yeah, you can play. We're not going to suspend you. We're not going to. But yeah, let's suspend Myles Garrett for 15 years because he reacted to, so the contrast in the injustice, what I seem to see. And of course, Rashi is out with an injury anyway. So, oh well. Sorry for that, Rashi. But he still has to face these criminal charges. I mean, it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. That's what I mean by that. So, and then of course, there's also civil lawsuits that are going to happen against these guys because they have money and people are going to go after that. So for a bit, there was talk that he might be suspended for 2 games. I don't even think that happened. He was playing September 5th with everybody else when the league started. He never didn't play, even though he's facing 8 felony counts after causing this multi-car crash and walking away from it. And it's on video. So there's a tremendous amount of evidence. Why hasn't the NFL done anything? Have you thought about this? Well, yeah. Apparently, there's a policy within the NFL that they don't take action until the criminal court has spoken.
Oh.
But guess what? They did with Deshaun Watson, and there was no criminal court. That was a civil action. That was a civil personal lawsuit, and they have with other people. So it's interesting how they say they have these policies for certain players and not for others. There were never, I mean, if that were true, there would have to be criminal court for everything that they're doing. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. They're 2 different entities, just like the civil court is different than the criminal court. So the NFL court or little system that they have for discipline and for penalizing players is different than criminal, is different than civil. So yeah, he's just never been held to account. And honestly, when you think about this, it just doesn't even make sense because let's say, because he is going to face criminal charges, even if he pleads out, he's going to have a record. So then let's say that happens in 3 years because the criminal justice system can move really slowly too, especially if you have really good lawyers because you have a lot of money, right? So what are they going to do then in like 2028 when he can't play anymore? Say, oh, by the way, we're going to suspend you for 2 games now because of that thing that happened back in 2024, right? So it doesn't even, it's not just. So I just thought I would bring that up. He's still facing suspension under the NFL's personal conduct policy, but yeah, they're going to allow the judicial process to weigh in first. So what do you think, Matt? Does that make sense, or do you think that's another thing they're just doing to help the Chiefs? Yeah, and the storyline this year. Yeah,
seriously.
Oh man, it makes me sick. It really makes me sick. It's just, especially makes me sick when you see what he did. People were not killed, but then Kyrie was killed for something even less than that, right? It was so reckless. It was so out of bounds, reckless and irresponsible. Do I think people make mistakes? Sure. Should they be forgiven? Sure. But he hasn't even you saw his mea culpa. He didn't show up, into the police station until whatever he had in his system wore off, right? So he couldn't be charged with that. And then, said, oh, I'm going to learn from this. Well, what has he learned from it? He hasn't even been held accountable. So I don't know. I'm mad about that too. It's another reason I'm not watching Sunday.
I get it. I get it. Totally.
It makes me mad. I know. Negative Nelly again. I've been pretty negative the last couple weeks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No apologies needed, Don. You're just talking about
Yeah.
what's happening out there. You know, I get it. I get it.
Well, because I pay attention to legal matters.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's not just the overall story, but all the little behind the scenes stuff that I've researched. And it's like, this
Mm-hmm.
is even more maddening the more
Oh,
you
yeah.
look into it. Yeah.
And it's good information most of us aren't really paying attention to. So, no, I appreciate it. Definitely.
And again, you appreciate a team that's going to be really careful about who they draft and who they
Mm-hmm. Who they bring in.
trade for and bring
Yeah.
into the team, because we we'd like to have the whole league have those standards that the Packers have.
Mm-hmm. McManus aside, what?
Yeah.
That's one. That's
It was
not great.
definitely a compromise. Did he change? Has he changed? Has he paid
I don't
for
know.
what he did? That's what Brian Gutekunst said. So, I mean, I want to believe that's true. By the way, there's another player there's another kicker. It's for the
Justin
Ravens,
Tucker.
Justin Tucker.
Yeah.
With
Ooh.
Deshaun Watson type of behavior. So you could
Mhm.
kind of start wondering, is this like a team thing? Because at the time of Deshaun Watson, there was some conversation about the fact that the Texans may have actually aided him in this.
Gross.
Yeah. So, but that was swept under the rug pretty quickly. So, did you have a final?
I do, and it's a positive one. So good, a good
Yay!
way to end.
I feel bad.
Bring it back up before we bring it home.
Yes.
Yeah. So of course, again, going on this discussion theme I was talking about, we already had best discussion number 1, best discussion number 2. This one is going to be best discussion news, not number 3.
Ooh.
See, you thought I had a pattern going there. Best discussion news. So I'd mentioned a little bit earlier that there was a really good conversation about Myles Garrett between Andy Herman and Justice Mosqueda, and like during the season, they've been doing like a weekly joint podcast. That's been always like a must listen, always really good because they're both so smart too. And today or this week when they're doing it, they announced that Justice is going to keep this going with Andy through the off season. So we get to keep hearing them talking about stuff once a week. I am so pumped about that because there are so many really good, like just top tier podcasts that go away when the season's over, or at least aren't there every single week. And so you always hate to see that happen. Like most of the Frozen Tundra Frequencies podcasts kind of like, roll up the sidewalk and go home, at the end of the season with a couple jumping in a couple times here and there. But to know that we'll still be able to hear Justice weekly, Yay. I'm very excited about that. It's best discussion news of the week.
That's a good announcement too to make, Matt, because I missed it. Andy puts out a lot of content, so there's things I can miss here and there. So that's great because we are, as the title of our podcast this week suggests, it's almost over. The season is almost a couple more days, and it will be one for the history books. So. So are you going to make any predictions for Sunday's game since you're watching? Or are you just like open to the Philadelphia Eagles?
Chiefs won by 2 scores. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
I don't know what the final score is going to be. Chiefs by 2 scores.
That'll be the only 2-score win for the entire season if that's the case. Unless, I don't know, what did they do for the Houston? They might have done 2 scores against the Houston, but
I have to go
all
back and look
season it
through
was
their
1
games.
score. All season 1 score. 1 score.
Probably.
Yeah. All close games. Yeah. All right, Maddie. Any final thoughts before we bring her home?
Just to mention that we'll be not every week for a little while here because there's just various things happening in our lives. So just for our listeners and viewers, it'll probably be about every other week for a bit there. I think is kind of how that works out if I remember correctly. But
yes, every other.
Pretty much every other week. So but we're not leaving. We're not packing up shop here. Just need to kind of stretch things out a bit. So we'll see. I think a couple of weeks, right? So, stay tuned for that. But anyhow, anything else from you, Dawn, before I bring
I'm
her home?
glad you mentioned that. Yes. And a lot of it is my fault, just saying.
Oh,
So, yeah, for the next couple months or so, it's going to be every other week just because you don't want to know why. But, and Iowa Joe in the chat. Say, nice to see you. So we'll see you in a couple weeks. Just got to be careful he doesn't swing a helmet at you. Plenty of reasons to boycott. And yeah, he's calling us slackers. It's slackers. And that's true. Iowa Joe it's very true. There's a lot of great content, and Joe has some that's going to be very much worth staying in tune to, because getting just we're going to blink. We're going to blink. I know I'm going to blink, and it'll be the draft.
Yep.
It's going to be so fast. Sure. It happens so fast. So, are you still thinking of going?
Oh, I was never really considering it.
No, you're not going. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was you. Maybe it was somebody else. Sorry.
Does somebody be like, hey, Matt, I have a bed you can sleep in, and we can get you to and from places so that like all the stuff I don't want to have to deal with is taken care of. That'd be great. I am not counting on that happening.
Yeah, it's too cold for me, so that's not even an option for me. I'm hoping I can get back to Wisconsin this year for sure in the warmer parts of the year, because I can't handle anything under 65 degrees.
I hear that. Well, all right. My kids need to get to bed, so I need to go put them in bed. So I'm gonna bring her home. Here we go. Behind the curtain. Friends, we'd love to have a chance to interview you and shout you out if you're a subscriber and a football fan. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a guest on our podcast, please let us know. Our DMs are open on all the social platforms. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow is by sharing it with your friends and family.
Yes, Maddie, that's right, because we love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on
Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.